I want to talk about in this video is I was sitting on my break yesterday at our homeschool co-op, kind of just thinking on ideas that I could and things that I could bring to the table for others. What is it that I know, that knowledge that I have that I could share, maybe that isn't really being shared, or is something that you don't see every day that could really benefit others. And one thing that really came to mind that I couldn't shake was the thought of, what do people do when they can't afford farm-raised, local meat or vegetables, or they aren't in a position where they can homestead, where they can grow their own food and raise their own animals, but they still need to eat nourishing food. And I did a quick Google search and I said nourishing dinner ideas or something to that extent. And it really wasn't nourishing. Like, there was no protein in it. There was no animal fats in it. It was all beans or lentils or starches and just empty calorie foods. And I'm like, man, even if something isn't raised on the most lush, green, organic pasture, there's still value to it. There's still nutrition in that. And I really want to do my best to try to teach people how to cook the cheapest meats, or what you would find in your local grocery store, well. Use the resources they have local to themselves, because not everyone lives in a place where they can go right to the farmer and buy food, or they're not in the financial position that where they can do that. So I really want to highlight some of that here on this channel. So yesterday I went to Walmart and I bought some meat and some vegetables and some potatoes, and I'm gonna go ahead and cook that for dinner, and I am going to show you how I do it and show you a way that you can get the most out of your grocery budget with a cheaper cut of meat, cheaper vegetables, but still have nourishment. So I'm gonna start with the meat. I really wanted to buy a brisket. The brisket cut was half the price. So I ended up getting a chuck roast. It's listed at $6.47 a pound, and the brisket was listed at like $3.60 something a pound. Obviously the brisket is cheaper, but the reason I didn't go with that was because I had to buy a huge brisket, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do with all of this meat? I could can it. I'm not comfortable canning meat though. Am I ready to take on that? I could put it in the freezer, which was totally reasonable. But what really made me stop and not do it was the fact that it was $60 for that piece of meat. Yes, in the long run it was cheaper, but I don't have $60 to just put into meat. I have to buy the vegetables and milk and yogurt, all the other things that I need to fill our cabinets and our refrigerator with. So that's another thing to think about when you're wanting to buy bulk. Yes, it is cheaper in the long run, and I'm not discouraging you from doing that. But sometimes we can't even afford to put up that upfront cost to where it could save us in the long run. Sometimes we only have so much every week, and dumping $60 on just meat isn't realistic when there's other stuff our family needs. So I weigh that and I take that into consideration when I am budgeting and I am, looking at buying food for our family. So I just got a chuck pot roast, $6.47 a pound. It's 2.5 pounds. I paid $16 for it. Still a lot of money for a piece of meat, but I think I can get maybe 3 different kinds of meals out of this, so it's okay. So another thing I want to talk about are vegetables. Broccoli, roasted broccoli is one thing that my family really likes to eat. So I did a little price comparison. I took a head of fresh broccoli. It wasn't organic, and it was about $3, and it was approximately 9 ounces. That also included the stalk. So the amount of the actual broccoli crown would have been less than that. I went to the frozen food section, and a 12-ounce bag of broccoli was $1. So you get 3 more ounces and it's $2 cheaper, and you can roast frozen broccoli. We've done it before, no one knows the difference. So I went ahead and picked up just a cheap bag of broccoli. So far I have $17 in the meal, but again, I can get at least 2 meals out of this bag of broccoli and probably 3 meals out of the roast. The last thing I picked up for this meal was sweet potatoes. I also grabbed some of these because I'm going to use them to start sweet potato slips. The organic sweet potatoes were a little bit pricey. It was about $5 for this bag, but I look at this bag as an investment. I know that we're going to be able to grow a lot more sweet potatoes off of just the few that I'm going to use for slips. We like these. You can bake them like a baked potato, put butter, a little bit of brown sugar, a little bit of cinnamon on it, and it is so good. So that is going to be another cheap option. You don't have to buy organic, you can buy regular. I just bought organic because they're not sprayed with a chemical basically that keeps them from sprouting. I want them to sprout because I want to remove the slips off of them and get those ready for the season's garden. One thing I want to mention about frozen versus fresh, typically frozen is, the vegetable is froze at the peak of its life, I guess you would say. So where you would harvest broccoli, they would go ahead and freeze it pretty quick, versus broccoli that's harvested and then shipped maybe halfway across the world fresh. So they say that frozen vegetables have more nutrition and are actually fresher in the long run than fresh vegetables. So just another thing to consider when you're doing your shopping. Anytime you are working with a cheaper cut of meat or something like wild game that could be tougher, you want to cook it low and slow. So it's about 11:30 and I'm gonna go ahead and get this going and get it in the oven and cooking now so that it's ready for dinner. And the first thing you want to do is you want to go ahead and pan sear it before you put it in the oven to cook. Doing that locks in the juice and the flavor of the meat, and it gives it that nice crispy outside, and it's just a really good practice to get into when you're cooking, like I said, like maybe a cheaper cut, something that's a little more gristly, or that is wild game. By browning it and then cooking it slow, you're also giving it time to break down all the connective fibers and tissues, and that is a really good way to get falling apart, pull apart meat. I am just a simple home cook. I don't have an outrageous budget. I don't have the latest and greatest kitchen appliances. I am really just doing my best to feed and nourish our family well within the budget and working with what I've got. So I want that to be a testimony to you that you don't need all the latest and greatest kitchen gadgets, and you don't need to have an outrageous food budget to be able to eat good food. I just put some butter in this cast iron Dutch oven that I have, and I'm gonna go ahead and get that all melted, and then I will brown the meat, but first I'm gonna go ahead and salt it. I was going to do sweet potatoes, but after looking at the bag, I decided that I wanted to go ahead and get slips off of all of the potatoes that I had. There was only like 8 potatoes in there. So I went ahead and decided to do just regular potatoes, and that works out really well because those can cook in the pot with the meat, and they get so tender and so delicious with all of that flavor. I also added some turkey bone broth that I made with our own turkeys. But again, that's something that can be purchased. You could just use regular broth or even water. Water works really well also. You just want to just put a little bit. You don't want to cover the meat because that's going to cook down and thicken up as the fat cooks off, and it turned into a really nice liquid that flavors the meat really well. It turns out to be a really tasty, tender cut of meat. I pulled the roast out of the oven and it looks so good. Chris has been over helping Aaron with the cabin, and I went ahead and messaged Amanda and said, I have enough food for your family if you guys want to eat dinner, and all I'll have to do is add some more potatoes to this, so that's what I'm doing now. She's gonna bring over some carrots, and when she gets here I'll throw those in, so those will be cooking also. So in this video you get the bonus edition of how to turn your meal into one that will work for more guests. I ended up cooking this roast at 250 degrees for about 7 hours, and as you can see, it is falling apart and fork tender. Everyone loved this meal, and I hope it showed you that good food is obtainable even if it didn't come from your homestead. Thank you so much for watching. May the Lord bless and keep you. Until next time.